this meetup to kind of foster a sense of community around startups in Colorado. And we always tell the story. You were a speaker originally early on. I won't miss his name, but we had a very prominent CEO, that personal friend, and I pulled a favor and I invited him to come to our event, and 4 fucking people showed up. It's like, oh, good. But since then, we just keep fucking doing it. We're too dumb to quit, and every month we show up and more people show up, and some of them actually come back. Only a couple. We only have a couple actually come back. So some of them actually come back, and in so doing, in the past decade, we've recently been named the 2nd best place in the country to start a company, which is and Josh and I are totally to thank for it. That's it. No, we had very little to do with it. It was unbelievable. So, at Denver Founders Network, we welcome everybody. This is a community conversation. This is because of you. You're here to support the startup community, and by coming tonight, it's a big part of that. So a couple of things that we do every time. The first thing we do is we thank our awesome sponsors. Do you guys like free beer? That is really shitty for free beer. Do you like free beer? Okay. That is often because our sponsors, who we will thank now.
I'll thank them. So these are our sponsors on the wall here. You can tweet your thanks to them if you'd like. They would love that. They've elevated third. They're in the room here. These guys are a local digital agency. If you have any web development, digital agency needs, they can help you out. We'd love to. Fluentstream Technologies, voice over IP. If you have any phone system needs for your startup or your growing business, these guys are awesome. They can help you out. Hatton Point, they do a lot of software development projects. So if you got that app you're trying to get off the ground, you've got that enterprise project you need a little help with, they'll hook you up. And then of course Galvanize provides this really awesome room that we stand in. So let's thank all these guys one more time.
All right. Questions, but we are very, very lucky tonight to be joined by a seasoned entrepreneur. Seasoned, the right way to say it? You got great hair. So
old
entrepreneur. Very good.
Short,
old entrepreneur who has been in Denver for a very, very long time. He's the founder and CEO of Spire Media. Please give a very warm Denver Founders welcome.
Oh, yes. Hey, all right.
Good to meet you, man.
Good to see you, man. Definitely. Oh, God.
You're really old and a little short.
Very short. So, very short, and don't talk as loud as you.
Right. If you want,
right.
I'll give you.
All right. Are we standing or sitting?
I'm standing.
Oh, are you? I just hope you'll do more of the pitch day.
Thursday.
All right.
So, for like the 4 people in this room that don't know who you are, which I think is safe to say, tell me just a little bit about Spire Media and what it is that you guys do.
All right. I'm Mike. I'm short. I'm Jewish. I'm old.
You have great hair, though.
What's that?
You have great hair.
I do have hair, which I'm proud of. So, yeah, thank you. Yeah. And yeah, my company is Spire Media. We're a digital product development firm. That basically means that we help startups and established businesses to build better software for web, mobile, and connected devices. That's our little pitch sentence.
Yeah.
I'm a writer. I wrote that.
All right, so you have, and for disclosure purposes, you and I have been buddies for a while, and we play poker together. I usually lose my money to you, but talk a little bit about...
By the way, that's how I got this gig, was because he played poker.
That's right.
Nobody would ever want me otherwise.
Fucking cheats, I'm pretty sure.
And he owes me a lot of money.
Yeah, that's true as well. Talk about your journey in Spire Media, because it's a crazy ass story. I mean, we could talk about just the ups and downs of Spire Media for an hour and a half, but
sure,
kind of compact that.
It's been all ups, by the way. All ups, but
so
the downs.
When did you decide to start the company? What was your backstory before you started the company?
All right. Well, let's see. I was not a good student. I knew nothing about technology. Yeah, that's about it. And I fell into it. I married a girl, and she was rich. And no, I'm just kidding. No, I went to University of Wisconsin and the University of Florida. After college, I moved to New York. I wanted to be a filmmaker. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be really cool. And the job that I ended up getting was with Trauma Films.
I just heard this today. day, it was Kat's thing that she did. Like, what is
Nice
Trauma
cat.
Films?
Does anybody know Trauma? All right, so there are some geeks here. If you know Trauma, you're a geek. They are the leading East Coast developer of monster movies. So they did.
Fantastic. You can't make that shit up.
That's
Seriously.
right. So they did Class of Nukem High, Cycle Sluts from Hell.
Oh, God, that's classic. Who hasn't seen that?
The Toxic Avenger. Give it up for the Toxic Avenger. All right.
That's amazing.
Yeah, either you're not as big a nerd as me, or you're not as old as me. So I did that. It was great. This was a time when the internet was just getting started, and the only people who were doing the web were nerds. So my boss.
You were an actor?
No, well, I played one of the monsters, but I was producing movies for him.
Okay, you're producing.
And my boss, he said to me, "What's this web thing? You got to find a way to reach our customers." So I did it. I learned how to build a basic website. This was like '95, and I was like, this is really cool. So I decided to move out to Colorado. I was sick of New York. My boss was the meanest human being I ever had, and I came out here, and I got a job at the Outback Steakhouse. Give it up for the Outback. And yeah, and that's how I ate. I did two things at the Outback. I grazed, and what's the other word? I seagulled. I seagulled and grazed.
What does that even mean?
Seagulling is when you take the food after it's been eaten and you just kind of take what's there, and grazing is before. So that was how I afforded
There's
to.
a large laugh from people that have been
Yeah.
waiters before, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, I was waiting for something better to happen. So I was doing that, and I said, I'm going to start a company. And I started this little shop out of my basement across the hall. I was paying $200 a month for those of you in Denver. For those of you who have been trying to find a place to live, you know that's a good price. So,
What
yeah.
year was this? 90?
So it was 95. So I did that. The guys across the hall from me were two ex-cons, Howie and Jay. Jay was in prison for gun running. I don't even know what gun running is. Yeah, and it seems really cool. And they couldn't drive, but they knew how to build websites.
Shut up.
They weren't allowed to drive.
Prison?
They learned in a halfway house. So they did the work. I got them French fries and chewing tobacco before I really had money to spend, and they would do the work. And this was how I started. I did it for 2 years this way, and it was going fine. After a while, I had a little business. I could pay Jay and Howie, and I was still in my apartment on Sherman Street. And then it was real business. These guys were finally asking to get paid. They were asking to get computers and all this stuff. Yeah, and I was like, well, I'll do something. I asked my dad for money. Instead, he gave me a credit card. And this allowed me to quit the Outback, which was great.
You just paid it off last year. Congratulations.
It took me a long time. It was $10,000, and that $10,000 was gone. Then all the client money was gone. And this was 2 years in, and Jay and Howie were going to leave and go back to a life of crime. And I wanted to save them from that, but I had no work. So I had $300 left, and I said to, actually, well, we'll get to Antoine in a second. This comes right around this time. I had $300, and I found this guy on Westward. This was before Craigslist, and he said he would get me 50 leads for $300. 50 people who wanted web development.
You're like, sold, man.
Yeah.
$300.
He took my $300
On
and
your credit card.
yeah, on cash, from in ones from the Outback.
From your other job.
And he gave me 3 leads and disappeared.
Fucker.
This guy. So anyway, I figured, what the hell? It was like the car splashed me after it started raining and all that. So I took the 3 leads. I said, I might as well use these leads. I called 2 of them. They were crap. One of them was a guy at Samsonite. He said, I have no work for you, but let's get together. I was like, fine. We ended up getting together, and we talked for the next, every week for the next 6 months. And he had this idea to build an e-commerce site, and this was like just when Amazon started. So after a while, he said, you know what, Mike? I've raised the money. I really appreciate you sitting down with me and talking with me and all of your thoughts. What if I gave you $450,000 to put together a team and build this?
Okay. 2002 happens.
Right,
and everything goes away. But one more question about sort of the boom times. Was there any lessons learned from that? Was there anything that you took away from not, knowing, hindsight, knowing what you know now, like maybe you put some money away, but would you have grown it bigger? Would you have grown it slower? Would you have been more dogmatic?
There are all sorts of lessons that I learned once again from groups like this and from people and from being there. And, obviously the one, pay yourself first. Well, it's interesting because you really have to sort of decide what kind of entrepreneur you want to be. I mean, I know a lot of the people in this room are startup people and
Let me ask you a question. I'm sorry to interrupt, but that is one of the big questions I want to get to, which is, you have run one of the most successful service businesses in Colorado, but did you ever decide, like, hey, I'm going to be
in the West Coast, or
West
country?
Coast.
No.
But did you ever make a conscious decision? Like, you were just building websites.
Right.
Did you ever make this conscious decision, like, I'm going to be a service entrepreneur, or hey, I want to be a product entrepreneur at some point. I'm going to start here.
When I started, I was just happy to have a job. I mean, there's one little story I forgot to mention, but while I was at the Outback, I went to try to get a job and I had an interview with it was CCG Communications or something, and this guy, Mark Richtermeyer, was working there. I don't even know, he now runs Spitfire in town, but anybody know Spitfire? No Spitfire? All right, anyway, I was supposed to meet Mark, and I told him this story. He never showed up. And I was like, fuck, I got to do something, and I started the company. Anyway, where was I going with that? Oh, I was happy to have a job, but then the more you get the entrepreneurial bug and you realize that you're good at it, lots of things went through my mind. I was the whole time between '98 and 2002. I'm sitting there and I have all this money and I have all these people working for me when I was a waiter before, and then you're like, well, then you see this guy and he just sold his company for $150 million, and this guy, and Jared Polis, who was a friend of mine. I'm like, Jared and I were hanging out, cruising for chicks. This was a long time ago, real long time ago.
And those of you that actually know that, very hard.
And now he's worth $1 billion, and Pete Essler's selling, and Matchlogic and all these companies. Right. And then you're like, well, I got to do something like that. And we kept coming up with ideas, but I realized, what I was good at was a service company, and I also realized that there were a lot of companies like ours that were growing and growing and growing and selling and doing roll-ups and all that during this time. I was just too young and too inexperienced to do it, and the truth of the matter is I know a lot of people who had been a lot more successful than me during that time. And by the way, this story is very relevant right now because we are in a boom time now like we were back then.
And people don't really get that. Like, this is a heyday right now.
This is a heyday. Yeah. This is definitely a heyday.
We're on a big run-up.
Yeah. I mean, but who knows? I mean, it could last forever, but we said that, back then. But, I mean, if I would have grown, larger, and if I would have, abandoned it all to do a product, maybe it would have been successful, maybe it wouldn't have. But I can tell you, after 17 years, so let's say 14 years later, I'm a great service entrepreneur, and I know how to run a services company.
Did you ever get really, really serious about a product business?
We had a few. I mean, we had a enterprise content management system that we use, Spire ESM,
right?
And we used that, and it just turned into a product that we use for our clients. But we never, it was like every time we thought about doing it, there was payroll to make, and there was another project going on. Later I'll talk about, finally I actually had an idea and we're actually making it happen, Antoine and I, which is really cool right now. But still, I'm just an advisor. I'm not like a lot of people in this room, being that I'm not a product guy, you know what I mean?
I mean, like, you and I, we sort of argue about this. Like, it's a little bit bullshit, because you're like, oh, I'm just a fucking agency guy. Like, dude, you created like a gigantic, awesome service.
It's not a gigantic, it's a good business. I mean, I think that my philosophy on life, I'm 43, which is not that old, because, I've been doing it a long time, so I probably seem and look older than I really am, but...
And you quit smoking.
I did quit smoking, so I would look older if I was still smoking, but I'd be skinnier.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. We got to keep it around the
Yeah. But I mean, this is once again, what kind of entrepreneur do you want to be? I mean, I don't need to be a billionaire. I have no desire to be a billionaire. I don't need to have a publicly traded company. And I mean, me personally, I like what I do. I like employing, 45, 50 people, and I like being around forever. I've had acquisition offers, I've had, roll-up and merger options, and they're all fine. But in my old age, I'm very happy doing this. When I'm young, dumb, and full of whatever, it's a different way of, it's a different way of looking at the world.
Before we talk about sort of the bus, because it's an interesting thing,
yeah.
do you want to?
Am I talking too much, by the way?
Do you want to look at some of the products you've created very recently?
All right. Yeah.
Is this?
Oh, look at this.
I just want to point out some of the products.
Pictures of me in there. You see?
Apparently, it was not nearly as funny as Alec and I thought it was.
No, he's here.
Yeah, that's the Michael Gellman lunch.
Yeah, I like that.
The Michael Gellman Mobile Day app. Yeah, that's cool. So talk about the crash. So things are going great.
Yeah.
You've got how many employees? 30 or so.
Yeah, about maybe 40.
Right, 40 employees. So things are going really well.
Yeah.
You got more work than you can handle.
We opened an office in New York.
Holy shit.
So I could go meet Jewish girls. there were no Jewish girls in Denver, and I was like 28 at this time, and I was ready to find a Jewish girl. I never did. Married 2 shiksas. But I had a good time in New York. It was nice. Yeah.
So you suddenly planes fly into the World Trade Center. Right. Shit happens. Tell me about that.
Al Qaeda? No, it wasn't Al Qaeda. I don't know. Whatever. No, I mean it was an interesting time. I think that even before 9/11, I think that everybody kind of knew that the economy was too the .com economy was too advanced for where we were.
Yeah, it was like the top they got.
Yeah, I mean it was a really crazy time, and I think that people just didn't. It was inevitable that the world was going to fail. I just had never been through a crash. A lot of people who were older than me had been in a real estate crash or an oil crash or something like that. And this was just, the world looked one way, and then all of a sudden the world looked different. And but it turned out to be a great experience for me because I learned what you have to do to stick around. And I remember, and were you there? Yeah. I walked in and I fired 20 people in one day, and
was it awful?
I enjoyed it.
Oh, shut up!
Yeah, no, it was.
Fuck you! You're fired. You're fired. You're cool. You're fired.
It was terrible. I mean, and the worst part was that these were all my friends. These were my only friends. The ex-cons were upset with me. They didn't join me at Spire. These were the only people that. My whole world, and I had to fire him. But it definitely taught me that that in business it's either you or it's them. You know what I mean? And you sometimes you have shareholders, sometimes you have partners, sometimes it's just you. But keeping the company around is what you have to do. And
that's a really big and difficult thing. And I've gone through it. I'm not sure if you have, but that early, you look somebody in the eye and say, it's going to be fucking great. I'm going to take care of you. And I'm going to take care of your kids. I'm going to help. Right. And then you have to go back to them and be like, sorry, I can't do
yeah,
that.
But I probably hired 600 employees. I probably fired 300, in my career, people have fired, Yeah. This is a business. This is what we do. And, not to get too Randian, if I may. This is, Ayn Rand, everybody gets I don't know what I'm talking about. This is a business. This is my job. My job is to keep the business around. Everybody else's job is to work for me. And if they're not working for me, whether they're costing too much or they're not doing the job that I need them to do, then there's no place for them. I mean, it's as simple as that. It's, Spire's been ranked one of the best places to work in Colorado 10 years. Maybe more than that. Still doesn't mean I don't fire people, and it still doesn't mean I haven't fired a lot of people when I've had to. That's part of the game, and I think you're all here because you feel that you'd rather be the boss or you have dreams of being the boss, and that's great, but being the boss comes with certain responsibilities, and one of those is firing.
All right, so I want to kind of got a few more questions that I want to get to, but I want to open it up if you've got I know Yates has got a question brewing. No? Yes, Yates.
Yates.
Well, I wasn't going to, but, you know, going back to your days with Nordmark, the thing that I think eBags did that nobody else really did at the time was user reviews, like actually putting up with letting people do it. Tell us about that conversation and how hard, because like, it's hard now to look back and say, because now it's so ubiquitous, right?
Yeah.
Everybody has lots of user reviews. But at the time, it was really a battle. So tell us about
I'll restate just real quickly for the people in the back. So the question was, eBags is famous, they almost created the user review. And so that was a development sort of thing. At the time. So
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that, that we did with eBags and one of the things that we do now is we build the application, we get the, get the really advanced MVP up, and then we work with the company as long as we need to build the team so that they can take it and run, because we have no desire to, to make them pay us for the life of their business. They could if they want. So, we were there during, I'll get back to the question. Eventually a lot of the great things that they did, that was done internally, and they made that happen. Not to say, we worked with them for the next 5 years, even after the crash, but a lot of that stuff happened internally. But what you're talking about with the reviews, that was one of the coolest times of my life, was when we actually got started, because we went to, anybody know Peter Cobb, who's now the head of marketing? We went to Peter's house. They must have been, like I said, 35, and his kids were there, and then Andy Youngs and John Nordmark and all these guys who were starting the company, they were all at the house, and we were just brainstorming. We would stay there from 7 in the morning until until 2 a.m. and just come up with ideas. And I think that was Nordmark's idea from the beginning. I think I probably at home have some sheets where he's talking about the reviews. So it just seemed like something that worked, and we were more than happy to try it out. So I don't know if it was definitely innovative, and I think that the whole agile process, which we were doing even back then, we just didn't call it that, is trying something, seeing if it works. If it doesn't work, trying it again in a different way, and then going there and and eventually making a decision whether or not to keep it. And they kept it. Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
said that you're loving where you're at. You didn't do some of these other exit strategies. You've been in this, what, 17 years?
19 if you include the ex-con years.
Yeah. So
always.
Yeah.
everybody one day will exit.
Are you saying we're going to die? It's got really depressing all of a sudden.
What do you look at where you're at now and with your company? What does an exit
That's a great question. Are you building a company for your family? Are you building a company to sell?
Yeah.
What are you building?
Look, yeah, everybody does need to exit, but it's not something that I think about, and it's not something that drives me. We're lucky. We're a successful company. We bring home, nice amounts of profit every year, and you build wealth that way. There are some companies that they don't exit. They just shut down. There are other companies where they pass it onto their children. Who knows? I'm enjoying what we're doing. We've made the full shift to product development from just web development and just web design over the past 7-8 years, and it's really doing well, and the market is enjoying it. So I'm just having too much fun doing it. I just feel like the reason I talk about being happy and not wanting to get out is because I feel like there's this sense, and there's been a sense since I was a kid, where you become an entrepreneur and there's an end. There's a start and there's an end, and I don't necessarily believe that. Terry Gold, anybody know Terry Gold? He's the guy who started Gold Systems, which was a big voice communication company that had been around for years. They were a failed company, and he always said to me, he's like, why do you have to come up with, we were talking, and he's always like, why do you have to come up with a new idea so you can move on? Why do you have to sell and do all this? It's just different phone systems. So basically what he meant by that was, I have an office, I have a phone system, you can always do something else within the office. This is just my vehicle. So I'm having fun. I don't know, and I'm rich enough. What I mean? I have enough money.
Like that's most of the narrative that we hear today is you have to build a company to flip and to sell in 3 to 5 years, and you go buy an island. But that's a tenth of the percentage of people that do this game.
Right.
And a lot more people like you that just go, I like what I do. Right. That's a little bit of a divergent path, is it not?
It completely. it's a real path, and it exists a lot more than you read about in the magazine.
Exactly. In our little big world, where you say,
right.
hey, we have to build this kind of, company. We have to be Facebook. That's going to be a $1
Right,
billion value.
right, and your odds of being Facebook are you have I have better odds of being in the NBA. I mean, it's true, I mean, that still doesn't keep us from doing a startup. But, Antoine and I, yourown.com. By the way, the name may change, but it's pretty awesome. And as Antoine said, we're looking for a CTO, and check it out. It's really cool. But, yeah, thank you.
Middle of the background, can I just ask you a quick question first? Because you set it up. I want to allow you the chance to say,
yeah.
Now Spire is not a digital agency in the way that we used to think about it.
Right.
It's a product development.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
I mean, we're all focused on product. We're all focused on being the outsourced product development firm for these startups. So a startup gets together, they raise a little money, and they have their leaders, they have their team, but they haven't yet hired their product manager. They haven't yet hired their their head of development. We have a process and a solution that comes in and says they can get this MVP out, they can get the product done, and we're going to take them through that what we call Spire Lean, which is a combination of Kanban and Lean and Agile, and it's a process that allows them to truly understand what they're building, why they're building it, and get it done quicker than they could internally, and for about the same amount of money that they could do internally. Gotcha. And that's for the startups. And then the big companies, you could have a company like Teletech or Inspirato or Western Union or Dish, and they have a product that they want to push out, but it's it's not going to be done. They have their internal teams. They're focused on their core product. They come to us, and we make those.
So you make you're at like a Skunkworks or Labs for some of these.
Without a doubt, that's exactly what we're doing. And if you hear about it, it sounds pretty fucking awesome, which it is. You know what I mean? So I'm having a lot more fun than I used to when I was building a marketing site for a shitty company.
In the middle over here, and then we'll go back over here.
Uh-huh.
How has social media changed the way that you look at your business?
Oh man, well, I mean, I think that, first thing I'll say is there's always been social media, you know what I mean? There's always been people communicating and sharing information. Ever since I started, my number one best marketing tool, and it still is today, is my quarterly newsletter. And probably half the people in this room get it because I kind of put every email address I ever get, every card. Maybe you don't, I don't know.
Did you steal our fucking email list?
Probably, no, I didn't, but I find, every day I meet, I put on it. But I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of people who read about what I'm doing on a quarterly basis and we get a lot, that's how we get our business. But I think when social media came about, it was just an extension of what we'd been doing on message boards. I mean, the internet was social media before it was the internet. It was news groups, and the internet really always has been about people communicating.
So, Michael, I used the World Wide Web. I don't know what you were using back in those days.
I was in the dark webs, yeah.
I was www.
Yeah.
So I was worldwide, which is why my internet is slower than most people's. Yeah.
Should have called me. Anyway, social media is awesome, but I mean, we're still doing the same things, just differently.
Over here, we had a question. Yes, ma'am.
So, being where you are now as a business owner and having success, what would be the qualities and characteristics that you would have seen in yourself as a 24-year-old server looking at how that $300 in your pocket that would make you invest in yourself?
God damn, that's a good question. I wish I would have asked them. Did you hear that? So
to invest.
So the qualities. So what? And if I can rephrase, just you're an OG entrepreneur. You've been an entrepreneur for a long, long time. So what were those things that you look back on that just made you realize that you were an entrepreneur?
So when
you were a waiter.
Right.
I mean, it was a big risk. You got $300 in your pocket.
Not that big of a risk of $300.
Well, yeah.
Looking for someone now to invest that $450,000 in, what were those qualities in yourself that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, nobody invested in me, period. The only investment I got was, that credit card my dad gave me and the paycheck that the Outback gave me. But I sold a deal. I mean, that was the reason the company was able to move forward, was because I sold this big deal, and I had sold a lot of deals from the beginning. So I was a horrible waiter, but the customers loved me.
give advice, a single piece of advice for those that are thinking about taking the leap into this world, what would you tell them?
Back when I was younger, I always used to say, just do it. You know, it's so easy. The first thing you got to do is just do it. And that's completely true. But before you do it, decide that this is what you want to do. You know, why do you want to be an entrepreneur? I mean,
yeah, like make sure that this is really original.
Right. You know, I mean, everything that you read about and you see on TV and in the movies and everything looks great. You know, being an entrepreneur is awesome, but it's a lot of heartbreak and it's a lot of hard work, and you're going to sacrifice a lot, and you could make a hell of a lot more money and be a lot happier and more successful getting a job. So just decide that this is what you want to do and what the reasons are, and if you do it full force and be passionate about it, and you know, be good to everyone else.
I can't think of a better place to start. Michael Gellman.
All right.